I think that's the core, this factor about learning and desperation to know more. What's behind the curtain? What is underneath this parda? I just want to know, like a curious cat. I just want to like grab it all.
That was the voice of Ashwini Hiremath, better known by her stage name, Krantinaari. She's a hip-hop artist, an activist, and a founding member of India's first ever female hip-hop collective, Wild Wild Women. I talked to Krantinaari about how hip-hop just hooked her, the struggles she's faced as a female rapper, and the totally fresh sound she and Wild Wild Women have created against all odds. My name is Shana. Welcome to Season 2 of Her Kajal Won't Smudge. Hip-hop is such a male-dominated space in South Asia, and the stuff desi male rappers talk about is sort of the same as Western rap. You know, the game, girls chasing Bentleys, and stuff like that. Today I asked Krantinaari about how she got into hip-hop, about her sound and Wild Wild Women's sound, and their lyrics, which speak to the female lived experience. Plus, spoiler alert, she raps a cappella in this episode. When I first listened to Krantinaari, I listened to it over and over. I've been listening to it and dancing around my office. You know, it's just so good. So I'm super excited to speak to you today.
Thank you so much. Actually, that was the song that was the one which got the most backlash, saying that that's not like a hip hop song or it's very old school. So yeah, it's just a starting song. So it's actually the most heard and most connected with song across wherever I've been.
And I understand that you've taken on the name Krantinaari. So tell me what that means.
Krantinaari in the literally sense means revolutionary woman. And initially my stage name was MC Bold before I actually wrote this song. But the initial stage of choosing the subject as Krantinaari was itself a very important step because there was so much of research that came into place and so many people that I met, so many women. And then I was like, okay, wait, there is a lack of a representation of all these voices. And who are these voices? What are these voices? They are revolutionary voices. In Hindi, when we say Krantinaari, which means a revolutionary person, it's always, connected to a man. Revolutionary man can be a freedom fighter or someone who has been there on the borders, soldier, who's just a man always. So then I was like, okay, wait, let me just replace that with a Nari. And because their voices are so revolutionary in its existence, I was like, yeah, let's do this wordplay. I always introduce my performances saying that I am not Krantinaari. It's all the women out here who are Krantinaari, who I'm representing. It's just that it's my voice. But it's all their stories.
So tell me a little bit about your feminism. You write about it, you sing about it. How did it happen for you?
When feminism comes to India, it has so many layers to it. This is a very surface level that, glass ceiling feminism exists. And we're speaking about US and their movements and just translating that here in urban cities. But what I realized is that the places I visited are very far away from the understanding of feminism, but at the same time are parallelly functioning with feminist ideologies without terminologies attached to it. So then I started driving myself more deeper into this side of information without having these constraints of terms, not having these bondages with, oh, I'm a feminist or I'm not a feminist or I am this, I'm that, nothing. I'm nothing right now. So what am I doing? And when I was there, then I realized that, women do take steps to empower themselves from smaller households. Like in Rajasthan, there's this extremely secluded place called Kshetrawa, where the Krantinaari video is made. There, women are not allowed to play instruments. They're not allowed to leave their households. And they have a lot of gender biases in their traditional community. So what they did is they started coming together to just have conversations in the evening with their children when they used to go drop them to school or when they had to buy vegetables. And then they started making this unit of their own. And slowly, slowly, they figured out that, yeah, let's convince our husbands, patriarchal husbands, to let us do these small tasks which will empower our household. Just weaving maybe a godadi. A godadi is basically this bed sheet which they started making at a very home level. And then they started exchanging patterns, exchanging wool, exchanging different kinds of studs which they would like to put onto their bed sheets. And that's how the conversation started growing. When that happened, then more interest developed. So then they saw scope, and then they started building this mandal, which is like a collective of women who come there and work together. So then they set up sewing machines and started collaborating for more domestic work.
And it began with like everyday feminism. I love that.
And the same structure I noticed in Uttarakhand, in Kalimpong, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. Every step I noticed that, man, this is the process. This is feminism. They are doing it without understanding or reading up or any exposure of the idea of it.
Right.
So there is a movement already happening.
Spontaneously.
Yes, yes. Very intuitively, very automatically. They were like, yeah, it is coming out from their internal self.
So how do you know so much about this?
I started, like in COVID, I was damn frustrated sitting at home, okay? I was like, the minute the lockdown was relaxed, I left my house. I literally ran away, filled my bags and ran away. And I started doing this barter system with people who wanted to paint murals in their community spaces. And that's how I started understanding what community is. What is it to be with a group of people with the same kind of thinking, with the same kind of understanding of local geology and geopolitics of their own region. And I tried to not be an outsider and blend myself in it by just being a listener. So I would call myself a listener throughout my process in all these 44 places that I traveled in 13 months. So yeah, that was the journey. It was just about not existing and just being there.
What an incredible experience. So tell me a little bit about your hip hop. I mean, I love listening to hip hop, but like, could I do any form of hip hop? Could I do any rap? No. So how did that happen for you?
So initially, when I started hip hop, I had no clue about hip hop culture. I was a basketball player. I used to listen to hip hop, which was again very male centric. So I never even imagined if there are females, or didn't even bother to go research about women. Then I was into breakdancing. I left everything and I went to a design school where I studied design thinking. And our school was very different in its way of education, in its system, that we did not have exams. We did not study sitting in a classroom. We were sitting under a tree, drawing trees and lying down and listening to music and understanding design in a very different way. Also, our problem statements or our design was very driven towards grassroots level solution building. So I always was very, very interested in public sector design. That quality was so much drilled inside me that I thought of connecting that into hip hop, into what I do with music. I did not know English when I was in school. I was in an English medium school, but I didn't understand and learn English that well because I was dyslexic and there were like so many layers to it. But then there was one thing that was happening to me, which was I used to play basketball and I was like a crazy freak. Like I would play 6 hours of basketball, not study. But the thing with that was the club that I used to go play and represent, there everyone used to speak in English. And there was a division between me and them because they would connect with each other. They would understand what they're talking about, but they would not connect to me because I would stutter or I would not make correct sentences and get bullied. And they would be like, oh, she's just so down market, or like, these very stupid statements that I used to get. There was this one girl called Meghna. She just comes up to me one day because I think she felt very empathetic about my situation. And she's like, hey, you don't know English? That's fine. I'll tell you one idea how you can do it. And she shared with me songs of Eminem. And she shared this song called Beautiful with me. And she's like, what you can do is pause every slide and read the lyrics and then slowly try and by heart it, and then just do that with whatever song you like. And then she used to hang out with me and then show me all these songs on MTV and VH1 and share songs on Bluetooth. Then she started telling me to make mistakes, fail, and just speak however I know, however I've heard it. And slowly I started learning English. I was so hooked to hip hop. Like, it was like a drug for me. And then I used to just sit and dissect. I used to not understand all the meanings or the metaphors, but I was like, shit, this is so interesting. Like, what? How can they even think of these references? The references were very educational and informative for me.
I love that. And how was your family about all of this? What did they think about you getting into hip hop?
Actually, they didn't know till 4 years of me doing hip hop. So after I went to design school, I was working in Microsoft. When I came back to Bombay, I had this idea that I want to do rap, but I could not tell them that I left a very great job because I want to do rap. So I just said that I was not able to adjust in Hyderabad. And I came back to Bombay. I was like, I'll take a job here. I took a job here in Kolaba. And then I was silently doing hip hop while I was traveling in the train. So I was spending around 1.5 hours going and coming. That's 3 hours of travel. So I had 3 hours of every day to do music. And then also I had met one person called MC Mawali from this crew called Swadesi, who used to have a studio in RA Colony, which is like 24 kilometers away from my workplace. So for 3 months, he's like, okay, you come, I'll teach you. But he didn't teach me anything. He would make sure that I come, I sit in the corner and I would just observe and I'd be like, please, let's learn today. And he would not respond. He would ignore me. And 3 months continuously, I would just travel to the studio and be like, okay, now, okay, now, okay, now, but then nothing. But then I used to tell at home that, hey, I have office. And because it's a design thing, we have work till late. We have work till 1, 2. Then has to go to gigs. Maybe, like rap around, go to cyphers, lie, do all these things. And then they recognized me when they saw me on TV one day.
What were you doing on TV?
We were being interviewed, me and Pratika, another person from Ireland, we were being interviewed by Ankur Tiwari for this show called Sound Tripping. So that was the episode. But I have got like mad statements even after that. My mom's like, I'll kill myself. I don't want you to do hip hop. You choose between me and hip hop or me and this music thing, because she was like, all the guys you meet, all these people are such druggies, and I see these things on TV and they are so explicit, and that's not what I want you to do. You're such a professional. We put you for professional education, and what are you doing, with your life? And we still have those conversations. Like last month, I've had like a big fight about me taking this step that I don't want to do design because it's exhausting. I can't do so many things at the same time. I just need to take a break.
Talk about like stepping outside what society or your family expects of you, right? And you have made this decision and you're making music and, you're part of a hip hop group, but it takes a lot of courage to make that kind of commitment to something. And so where does that commitment come from?
I think I have always been this crazy person who loves being unpredictable, because every time I have done something, I have liked being this person where I take risks. I just end up in that situation. That has been attracting me most of the time. And that's what makes me keep the commitment. But also this main core of being unpredictable is learning. Is because in design, I was getting very stagnant. In sports, there was a point where the body, reaches that saturation. And everywhere else, it was just being saturated to a point where I was like, I was doing the same thing, but there was no movement. So this was that point where I was failing, I was learning, I had challenges every now and then I had questions. I had like tons and tons of questions to seek for answers. And because this is such a huge ocean of music that every little drop is like, oh wow, this drop is a world in itself. And that keeps me curious, and it just burns me to grab these drops and fill my bottle. So I think that's the core, this factor about learning and desperation to know more. What's behind the curtain? What is underneath this parda? I just want to know, like a curious cat. I just want to like grab it all.
Wild Wild Women is India's first all-female hip-hop collective. The founding members of the group are rappers Krantinaari, #Preeti, MC Mahila, J Queen, and Pratika, who came together in 2021. So tell me about Wild Wild Women. And it sounds like, you've now got a group of women who share your love of hip-hop. So tell me about how that happened.
Initially, we were scattered in hip hop everywhere. And then we had this first generation of MCs who was Manmeet Kaur and DMC and Raja Kumari. Like all these people were just repeated across media, every single place. Like every single place you went, you would just see these three names. For each one of us, I think we lack the idol to look up to be like someone, the inspiration draw. Like we didn't have anyone to get inspired from, because these three characters had very different personalities who we didn't resonate with fully. Each one of them had their own identities, each one had their own journeys. If we had to go search for inspiration, female hip hop, like where was that? We could not find it. It was all Western. It was all coming from America or UK. So the Indian context was missing. But that was the same time when I noticed that there are so many other women out here individually fighting to find their existence in male groups, in these male crews. So everyone's like, hey, I want to join your crew. And the boys will be like, they would not even say yes, they would not even say a no. They will just keep like ignoring and be like, okay, fine, you're just learning. You're not yet up to the mark of the skill that the boys are at. But the girls used to just end up hanging out in all the gigs and not having the confidence or not having that space or opportunity to put out what they want to. Mm-hmm. So I recognized that. And then one day, Preeti and me just went for a cypher in Marol. Again, very male-dominated cypher where all the men were not giving us a chance to do our verses. But then we were like, you know what, we're going to just strike our verse in it. So we went in, and after that, we were having dosa by the street in a street shop. And then we were like, hey, man, why didn't we connect all these years? Why did we just look at each other and say hi and give a hug and, went our own ways? Why? What happened? Why didn't we converse? So then we're like, let's do one thing. Let's call all the people we know to this cypher next Sunday. And we didn't put any posters. We didn't put any like this social media nonsense. We just tried and found each and every number of the girl we knew who comes to the gigs. And just like that, we had 10 girls who were in hip hop. They were doing breaking, they were doing rap. We were like, anyone we know from the hip hop scene. No matter what medium they use, we'll just get them just to meet.
So tell me about the name Wild Wild Women, because, in Hindi, wild woman is like usually you think of like a jungly woman, it's not what you'd want to be called, but you guys are owning that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think it is actually a nice thing that we call ourselves jungly, because we can now translate or convert that negative connotation to it with a very different identity of that word, So when we were all together, we were like, shit, this is so wild. This is so crazy. And then someone said wild, and then, yeah, we're women. So we just, it was very intuitive in that circle because of the energy. I think the core value or the core connection about Wild Wild Women is the energy. If you put all of us in a room, it's crazy. It's like one volcano in that room. It's heat. It's very wild.
And how do you write your music? Do all of you contribute to it? Do you bring something to the meetings? How do you do that?
First and foremost, the most important thing is to create a space for vulnerabilities, because that's what we don't have, a space to share our vulnerabilities. So we have made this a part of the process that we come together, we meet at anyone's house and just sit and talk about what's happening, what's our mental health situation, what's happening with our personal lives, and where we are at, in general with our life. We have struggles with our mothers who are of the same gender. Why do we have so? And what are these societal issues? And that too without these terminologies. Again, this is very, very habitual and behavior driven. It's nothing to do with terminologies and theories that we read. It's just so natural. When you put women in the space, they are going to talk about emotional situations that they are in. They're not going to be radical or logical. It's very emotional. And when we are churning out that emotion deeper and deeper, and these conversations get very deep, we then sprout out this thing that, shit, why don't we write about this? This energy that we have. Like Game Flip is about this cribbing session that we had that, man, what is this game that guys keep talking about? What is a game without, women in the scene? So then we were like, okay, let's make a song on that.
I was really curious why that song is called Game Flip. So what is the game and what is it that's being flipped?
That trend of hip hop that year we were in, everyone was like, game mein aake baat kar, tu to game mein hi nahi hai chote, like you're not in the game, son, and like all of these things. And then we're wondering, what is this game? Where is this game happening? And why are we not in this game? And what is this sport? Even we want to be a part of this sport. So then we were like, okay, let's make this as a female game flip. Let's flip this up. So the idea is that now we are flipping this game and, we're going to take it our way. We're going to have our own rules. We're going to rule this game, basically. So it's actually a motivational song for more younger women to, feel empowered and feel inspired about their own self.
And so one of the things I noticed with your music and also Wild Wild Women's music is that, it doesn't feel like in a male-dominated field, it doesn't feel like your music is really imitating men, right? It feels like something different is going on. How is it that you've not fallen into that trap?
Because we don't hear Indian hip hop a lot. We are not listening to any of those kinds of songs that, influence us in its ways. We have a very different story. I don't think I can connect to the men who are talking about, their disses or their all of these games, all of these vibe and their money. And our struggle has been very different. Our struggle with money has been different. We have to balance so many things. We have to take care of the family emotionally and take care of our careers. There are so many different attributes to our journey that we don't connect to it. In the same way that we are in this situation when the men cannot connect to our music, and that's why we don't have an audience. A lot of women don't listen to hip hop. That's like one big fight that we are facing. But because we don't listen to men, we are not influenced by it. But also there is a sound that we all have internally resonating. We love horns, we love break beats, because the way we are like always so bouncy, we are just so jumpy and energetic that we connect with this sound. That's why we make our own sound.
Your sound is so fresh. I mean, it's different. I can feel that there's like a hip hop beat to it, but then there's something else that is much more sort of relatable to me, and it might be the lyrics. So I want to ask you, and you can completely say no because it's probably a big ask, but I would love you to rap a little bit of Krantinaari. Would you mind doing that?
Okay. No, I wouldn't mind. I love that song. It's so cool. Okay. क्रांतिनारी सिर्फ मैं नहीं, मैं तुम्हारे अंदर हूँ. तुम खुद के अंदर झांक के देखो और वो बात मिलेगी जो मैं तुमसे कह रही हूँ. पिता और पुत्र ने चलाई है जो रीत, सह रही इतना बोझ दबा के अपनी चीख, लगे थे हजार काटे चुभे जो राह पर, इलाके में हुई प्रगति जब हुई सुशिक्षित, पर अमीरों के इमारतों में भी नहीं सुरक्षित महिला अभी, हर मुश्किल में वो डट के जब सोच इनकी घटिया पुरानी परिभक्षित, बड़ा अपना ज्ञान कर दिमाग विकसित, हुआ हादसा 5 में से 3 के साथ, खुद के रिश्तेदार गुनहगार इस दफा, 4 दीवारों में फंसी खुशियों को देती फांसी, साहसी ना कोई दासी गम को भुला के हंसी, कब तक ढूंढते रहेगा बंद आंखों से खुदा, तेरी लाज भूला होगा तो होगी सजा, ना बस 9 से 5 दिन और रात काम करे दिल से काम सिर से शान, क्रांति नारी देने आई हक समान, क्रांति नारी है प्रकृति का वरदान, क्रांति नारी 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 क्रांति.
Love it. I love it. Can you translate some of that for us? Just whatever part you want.
Yes. So in the first section of it, I'm talking about how Pita and Putra, which is the father and the son who are dominating our lives, they are running this system, they are running this community, this whole, structure. And then how I am stepping forward through this whole thorny path. I'm trying to cross this, even if it hurts my feet, I'm still gonna walk through it and fight this fight. And then it says that the injustice is also happening in rich people's closed doors. It's not only about the poor facing it or, these stratas of community, different classes or different sections or classes. It's happening in everyone's house. It's happening how I am going to take all these together and burn it together and, get that fire energy to convert it into progress of all the women. And if you are going to be blind to this idea or this movement, then, you're going to get a strong blow. So don't.
It's brilliant. So I want to thank you so much, Ashwini, for being Krantinaari, for being the revolutionary woman, and for the work you're doing with Wild Wild Women, the jungly, difficult, outspoken women. Just by doing what you're doing, you're changing the conversation and you're starting so many new conversations. And I can't think of a better way to change social norms than to talk about them and to sing about them. So Krantinaari, thank you. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Krantinaari talked about the many desi women who don't have the lingo of feminism, but nonetheless, they're carving out everyday ways to be empowered. She refers to this as something intuitive that she'd noticed while working with rural women. This concept will really stay with me as like the purest proof that in every woman's heart, there is a desire to be something, to do something, to have a life expression. And Krantinaari and Wild Wild Women are great examples of this. Desi female rappers who are rapping about the female lived experience. And their music, their energy, well, it's electric. Thanks for listening to Her Kanja Won't Smudge. I'm your host, Shauna. If you want to get in touch with us, enrage, or have a good cry, or just tell us what you're thinking, look for our webpage, because we have one now, or find us on Instagram. Until next week.